Welcome back to the Second Side podcast. My
That's
name
the
is Jagger. Oh, did I actually do
yeah,
it?
yeah.
I did it. Yes, okay. I got it out of the way. Welcome back to the second season podcast. My name is Jagger.
My name is Robin.
And today, after a few weeks living in the land of theory and abstract concepts, we're going to talk about real basketball courts and real basketballs today.
We just had the NBA Cup Quarterfinals. None of those games really turned out super close, but I think there's still some very interesting things to kind of pull away from those games.
Yeah, I think none of the games quite lived up to the very lofty expectations we had going in, but nonetheless, all four teams put in a pretty valiant effort, and there's a lot we can take away from teams trying at a high level.
Mm-hmm. I think the game we're going to start with is Lakers Spurs, and this is a really interesting matchup because the Spurs are, especially without Victor Wembanyama, well, I guess not especially, but without Victor Wembanyama, they're very focused on this three guard core that are super athletic, fast. They'll play fast. They'll run hard. And I think that caused a lot of issues for the Lakers and kind of highlighted some of their big weaknesses as a team.
The Lakers are slow, very slow in almost every sense of how basketball is played, whether it's just getting up and down the floor, getting back on defense, and also in the half court. Their defensive movements are not quick and enthusiastic. They always seem to be almost looking around that someone else is going to cover for them after a missed rotation. And we think there's a couple reasons why this is the case. I would say mainly when your three best players are 41-year-old almost LeBron James, Luka Doncic, and Austin Reeves, you're going to have some defensive issues and especially quickness. And them playing 35, and in this game's case, Austin Reeves playing 40 minutes a night, it just puts a lot of pressure on those two other players on the floor, which is going to be usually DeAndre Ayton, Rui Hachimura, Jake LaRivia, Marcus Smart. And these are all players in their careers where I'm not quite sure they can handle that type of defensive load.
I think what really stood out to me was the number of times one of those three guards, especially Castle and Dylan Harper throughout this game, would just blow by whoever was guarding them on the perimeter, and you'd end up with, LeBron James ground bound or Luka Doncic trying to make a swipe at the ball when they got to the basket, and that's just not good enough, right? Like
No.
fundamentally, they can't let people kind of get that immediate blow by because they don't have the level of rim protection, especially in like this game where they went to LeBron or Rui at center, right? Like there's just not enough rim protection for them to be getting beat that quickly and that easily on the perimeter.
It like I said, it puts so much pressure on rotations being perfect, and they were very, very far from perfect in this game. Like you said, the blow by would happen, and whether it's a rotation did happen, LeBron or Rui, they're just gonna not do a lot at the rim at this point in their career. And then the Luka Doncic swipe downs. Like there's a couple examples from this game we'll probably talk about where it's getting into the realm of really bad Luka in terms of what we talk about with his subpar defense and effort.
Despite that, the Lakers are currently fourth in the West, and what's so interesting about that is when you look at their kind of their base ratings of offensive and defensive rating, they're seventh in offense, which is good. That's good, and 19th in defense, and that leaves them at
Middle of the pack in terms of overall net rating.
yeah, it leaves them I think 13th in overall net rating, which you would expect them to have won
13 games.
13 games so far this season, and
opposed to the 17.
opposed to the 17, which actually leaves them second now. Oh no, first in wins above expected. And so I think it's really easy to kind of look at their their base, look at their position and kind of how they're doing and be like, okay, it's going pretty well. But I think there are some really like profound flaws with this team that show up when you end up in a more intense playoff-esque environment. Kind of the ultimate example of this is Rui Hachimura. And he's a good player who can definitely help a team, low-end starter probably, but what he kind of brings to the table is more of like his ability to kind of get to shots, He shoots a high percentage on his threes, but doesn't really take a lot.
He's a very dependent offensive player.
Yeah, he's a pretty dependent on. Well, I don't know if I agree with that. I think
When he scales up, it's usually
yeah. When he scales up, he
very
ends up
good.
as a pretty dependent offensive player, but he just doesn't have the. I guess the kind of the point I'm trying to make is that the Lakers are kind of missing key parts of this team, or like what makes a team good, and there aren't like they don't have the level of rim protection that the like good Dallas teams had to kind of help hide Luka and another small guard. They don't have like the wing athleticism that those teams had in like PJ Washington or Derrick Jones Jr. to put on those primary assignments that can kind of, at least if nowadays it doesn't really matter. Like, you can be an amazing defensive player, you're not going to be able to actually stop them every time. You're not even going to get close to that. You're going to try as hard as you can over and over and over and over and over again, and a big part of that is just trying over and over and like continuing to execute perfectly every single time. And the Lakers just don't have players like that.
We describe it as being able to chip down the opposing offense. Like you said, players like Derrick Jones Jr., PJ Washington, they have the ability to get into the other opposing team stars, and the phrase is just chipping them down. Like you said, you're not going to stop them, but that's not the point. And just makes everything a little bit easier for the back line. For this Lakers team, we said that's Marcus Smart right now, who is really at, I would say, the last stages of his career as an effective rotation player. He probably shouldn't be starting, but he's likely going to have to be thrust into that role with this team because of their very large deficiency in point of attack defense. And I think my biggest thing that I see with this Lakers team is, yes, the depth that we're talking about in terms of just rotation bodies around these 3 stars, which we can say 3 stars now. Austin Reeves has gotten to the point offensively where he's a high level 3rd star. But also in terms of that 3-star construction, I see a lot of redundancy in terms of players that want the ball in their hands and are effective with the ball in their hands, and maybe aren't even bad off-ball players, but it's less so what they can do off-ball and more they want to get to when they do have the ball. So whether it's LeBron off-ball or Luke off-ball, even Reeves off-ball, these are players that can catch and shoot and can cut off-ball, but what they want to do is create for the offense. And I think there's a lack of cohesive flow even when this team is at its like quote unquote best. And I think that also hints at the higher level challenges that we see with this team in terms of when all 3 players are on the floor at the same time, it just doesn't flow as nicely as you think it would look based on their talent.
What is so interesting about that is, despite kind of having some, when you look at the film, some kind of real hiccups and some weird fitting pieces that don't always look right, their offense looks, or not looks, but statistically is really healthy in some regards. They're 4th in effective field goal percentage and 1st in free throw rate. So they're getting to and making, like, they're making shots and they're getting fouled. And those are kind of like, especially effective field goal percentage is like the biggest deciding factor in how good your offense is. But when you dig a little deeper, some more flaws start to show up. And I think it's a little disingenuous to call them flaws outright, but an interesting stat is location effective field goal percentage, which the Lakers are 26th in the league in the location effective field goal percentage at 54%, which is nearly 4% lower than their actual effective field goal percentage. So they're hitting hard shots, and they're hitting shots from places on the floor that you generally want to take fewer shots from. And I think that tracks when you look at kind of their talent, is that the people taking shots on this team are generally tough shot makers, right? Like Luka is very good at that. Austin Reeves is very good at that. LeBron is, one of the best ever at that, right? They're very good at making shots that,
For the average NBA player, these are not good shots.
But for these guys, they are good shots. And while I would like Luka to kind of cut some of the fat off of his game at times, not even in reference to his physical shape, but actually he sometimes takes shots that are a little bit like, okay, buddy, like, calm down a little bit.
Like maybe 2 or 3 step backs per game instead of 6 or 7.
Exactly. And, one of the kind of things that we were taught is that, or coming up in basketball, is like, when you get to the playoffs, the most important thing is the ability to hit shots. And especially hit the shots that the opposing defense is willing to give you.
Resilient shot making
is
what we describe that as.
And So you'd think that like the Lakers, there is an argument to be made that the Lakers offense will be more resilient. But I'm not fully sure if I buy into that. And the bigger issue is that their defense just like isn't good enough. And they don't really have the players on the team to fix that. Right? Rob Pelinka is seemingly allergic to two-way players, and when you get to this kind of point where it's the offense is where it needs to be and the defense needs to get better, and there's these three players that kind of make your offense what it is, and they're not gonna help you defensively. And I mean, I guess you can argue a little bit that LeBron will lock in a little bit more when we get to the playoffs, but oh my God, we're getting to a point where he's, every
How
year
much
that gets harder and harder,
can we
right?
keep saying that? Yeah. Okay. So I want to hammer in on what you were getting at with the type of shots that the Lakers are generating and the type of players that are taking those shots. I think the idea of having resilient shot makers is very important, but in terms of health of an offense, I think it's more important that you can get to those shots and make those shots if you're regular, we can call it regular, or like good offense, getting to the rim, generating good open threes is not working. Having that as a something in your back pocket, the tough shot making. When the tough shot making is what you hang your hat on at this beginning, we've hinted at this a couple times in earlier podcasts, but you have to be at such a high level, like that Kevin Durant, Steve Nash, Steph Curry level of tough shot maker for that to be viable offense at the playoff level. And you could argue that the Lakers are knocking on the door of that with Luka and LeBron and Reeves, but it puts so much pressure on that tough shot making that it becomes really hard. I think the biggest historical example in recent years has been DeMar DeRozan with his stint with the Raptors, where in the regular season he was always putting up pretty big per game scoring numbers, shooting numbers always look pretty decent. He never really got to the rim that much. Obviously, not a great 3-point shooter, never took threes. So in the playoffs, when teams are more keyed in on his tough shot making, it never really helped the Raptors. They weren't able to generate high level offense, even when they were first, second seeds in the East during those years. So I think this is another variation of that example with this current Lakers roster.
So we've talked about the strengths and weaknesses of the Lakers. I think it's pretty clear that they have some work to do on the roster building side to be a like real team.
Real team in terms of playoff contender.
Yeah, in terms of playoff contender. Right now, I think once they get to the playoffs, the lack of athleticism will show itself even more, and I don't really see how they get out of the first round.
I would
unless
agree.
they're in
I would agree.
like one of the top, unless they're like a first or second seed, which I don't think they're going to get to.
Yeah, I think based on what we've seen on film so far this season and this game specifically, my God, the Spurs really ran them off the floor. And a lot of the statistical indicators that we see, they're a middling of the pack team, and that's play-in, really lucky first round win if they make it out of the play-in. It's analogous to the middling to bad Luka Dallas teams before they brought in those additions at the 2024 deadline. It's not a lot of athleticism, not a lot of point of attack defense, and of course the rim protection is probably arguably the biggest flaw with this team. And yeah, even with a generational offensive talent like Luka in today's NBA, where the talent level of the league in depth is so deep, it's really hard to be competitive with the current Lakers roster, like you said.
So that leaves them with a couple of options, and I think the kind of clear one is moving on from Rui to try to upgrade on the wing and bring in a real athletic small forward who can both shoot and kind of guard the best player on the other team. Fortunately for them, they have Luka Doncic, who has done magic with some, poor-ish shooters and turned them into like viable offensive threats. And there are some options around the league. Is it worth it for the Lakers to go make those moves, like Herb Jones or something like that? Like, I think that's a little bit up in the air still. I think that's kind of to be determined.
I would lean towards no, man. I think they're pretty far away. I think when you're as reliant as they are on Marcus Smart shot making at this point, like it stood out. Like, how many shots did Marcus Smart take in this game? Yeah, 16 shots, 14 threes, which kudos to Marcus for getting them up, but I think that's a pretty big indicator of where this team is at right now.
Well, let's move on to the Spurs now. They've been without Wemby for a while now, and they looked awesome in this game, kind of just driving to the basket repeatedly, especially Stephon Castle and Dylan Harper. I will say I was a little disappointed with De'Aaron Fox. I'm just never really getting to the basket. I don't know if he took a single shot around the rim besides one ridiculous one that against the Lakers in like semi-transition that never should have happened. And that was on the Lakers, not on him.
Yeah, one of the worst transition defensive plays I've ever seen on an NBA floor. In reference to one of Luka's terrible swipe downs, yeah, Fox basically walked to the rim and got a layup. But yeah, our perpetual De'Aaron Fox skepticism continues. He continues to be really, really reliant on, again, tough shot making, which is even more frustrating for an offensive talent like him, who we've seen get to the rim many times in his career and is very capable of that. So, yeah, he continues to lean really heavily on his tough mid-range scoring, which he can do at times, but it is letting the defense off the hook.
And that's not to say he had a bad game. I actually think, like, outside of just not quite getting to the rim as much as I wanted him to, I thought he had a pretty good game. I felt like he really kind of controlled the game. Like, a lot of this game, despite Stephon Castle being there, played like genuine point guard and had some really nice passes in transition. He had one to Stephon Castle from when Luka took a step back and Stephon just beat Luka down the floor because Luka was complaining and just put it right in Castle's hands for an easy layup. But what we're really focused on today is this matchup with OKC. There are rumblings that Victor's going to play.
We saw footage in this game of Victor pregame shoot around, and usually they only show that or advertise it on the broadcast if a player is close. So I personally, this is just like vibes and tea leaves. I have a pretty good feeling about a potential Victor return.
He was upgraded to day-to-day, so fingers crossed. But what do we think? Oh, and a little side note, OKC did win their game by a lot.
That is a game that did happen, right?
It did, in fact, happen.
Okay.
Not much else to say about it. Sorry, Suns fans.
Shout out.
You've actually been like one of my favorite teams this season.
Shout out Colin Gillespie.
Yeah, I love the Suns this season. They're really fun to watch, but not this game. So we're
no
just
Devin
gonna,
Booker, not
yeah,
that
no
night.
Devin Booker. Not that he's been great, but I love you, Suns, right now. Trust me, you will get your flowers, just not today. So the biggest question is obviously, does Victor play? And I think we're both at this point kind of leaning towards him playing, or at least manifesting that.
I think it's more fun just to do this analysis anyways if he is playing, because regardless, OKC is probably a heavy favorite. I haven't looked, but whether or not he plays. So I think we can go with like Victor playing and then the trickle down from there.
Then the question becomes, what is San Antonio's plan for trying to deal with Shea and trying to deal with this just juggernaut of a team? What are your thoughts?
So the first thing that comes to mind when you think about dealing with Shea, you think about the Spurs' best defensive perimeter talent, and that's Steph Castle, who has proven to be a really solid, what we describe as like the set it and forget it, block and trail type of defender, where he has the strength to hang with players one-on-one, especially bigger players, which is really important for point of attack, and also his screen navigation. He's nimble and fluid enough to get over screens and make the screening actions difficult. Like we talked about this before, he might get screened eventually, but it's going to be on that second or third screen, which is big because we talk about also all the time the shot clock efficiency numbers, where every single second that ticks down the shot clock, offenses get less and less efficient. So making offenses work just a little bit harder, again, chipping them down, is something I think Steph Castle is really good at. And it's going to be a team effort, obviously, dealing with SGA. But I think he's a really solid starting point for the Spurs in terms of overall defensive game plan.
Yeah, I think defensively, the kind of first idea, and this is what's so interesting about the NBA Cup, is that you really only get one shot at it, right? Like it's not like a playoffs where you
small
can
sample theater
build on what you're doing, right? Yep. My first thought going into this is like, I want to force OKC to take like 53s. I don't want them at the rim. I preferably want Shea taking as few shots as possible, so I'm pretty willing to like help off of Dort, like force him to be a shooter. All right, I want Dort to take 17 threes in this game. That would be kind of my game plan going into it. And I think there's a couple ways you can kind of go about that, right? I think the first one is just pretty aggressively helping, especially like raking down on Shea's drives. We've seen OKC go to like flat set lineups where like they essentially will go like a flat four and put two people in one person in either dunker spot and then people in the corner to let Shea kind of operate in that nail area without anyone being able to kind of swipe down easily. I think they could, or San Antonio could go to a double big look with Cornet and Wemby.
Specifically to deal with the 1-4 flat, or were you?
No, that's not in reference to the 1-4 flat, but just really walling off the rim as much as you can.
Do you have any thoughts on, let's just say Shea gets really cooking and out of that 1-4 flat setup, would you consider?
I would just start sending a double.
Zoning?
I would just start sending a double.
Straight.
I would get the ball out of his hand the moment he crosses half.
Essentially 2-3 at that point. If
he's shooting like he's gotten a true shooting of like 70%, right? Like this is some of the most unheard of guard efficiency, and
so don't even mess around in the half court. Just literally send the double.
Get it out of his hand.
Scramble on the back line.
Scramble on the back. You have Cornet and Wemby on the back line, who are just these. Wemby is one of the greatest rim protectors we've ever seen. Cornet is a very, very serviceable rim protector. So that would be my kind of game plan going into it, is just force them to take threes, even if they're pretty open threes. We'll scramble around. We have a lot of athleticism. OKC doesn't really have any, and Chet too. I want Chet and Dort taking like 15 plus threes essentially. And I think they have the athleticism on the perimeter to kind of fly around and make that happen. And I think this is a game where going for that 3 guard lineup of Fox, Castle, Harper, and then probably Harrison Barnes or Julian Champagny, or even Keldon Johnson if you want someone a bit bruisier next to Wemby or Cornet, could really work, because OKC isn't going to just dominate you with size. And I think, I don't think Harrison Barnes is going to get overpowered by Chet.
I mean, OKC has the size lineups in their back pocket if they want to go with Hartenstein, Chet, Kenrich Williams, can bruise. But that's not what they want to do. They want to play
like
Chet.
If they have to do that,
that's a good thing.
I'm
that's a win.
Living on cloud 9, right?
I would agree. I think that all makes a lot of sense. In terms of flying around on the back end, I get a little bit nervous about the idea of Harrison Barnes doing that at this point in his career. So it's going to be a lot of him maybe closer to the basket.
That's why I brought up Keldon Johnson. Like,
exactly,
you might want to go to someone who has a bit more.
This is going to be an athleticism game for sure.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Yeah.
This could turn into a really fast up and down game, but I think that serves OKC more than it helps, more than it serves San Antonio. I think San Antonio wants to turn this into a slog defensive game.
I don't know. Is De'Aaron Fox, can he pull out a vintage performance and actually run down the floor with the ball in his hands fast? And is that something he might be willing to do? And
well, it's also very nice
the feedback loops.
Sorry, what were you saying?
Just like this game is probably going to be a very heavy feedback loop game where San Antonio stops. We all know about the OKC defense. They're going to want to just run in my opinion, every second they can.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the best defenses of all time. So the less they see of that in the half court, I think the better. And so the impetus goes on Fox to generating those fast break advantages.
Well, that's what's so nice about this triple guard lineup, is you have 3 players who are more than capable of going down the court quite quickly. But I still think it serves it's better for San Antonio to kind of make this a defensive game, really force OKC to have to hit threes and wall off the rim as best they can.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But then on the other hand, OKC would say like, fine, we have the best half court shot maker arguably in the league, so we're totally cool with that. And then, you want to send doubles at us every time? We have full confidence in Lou and Chet to hit those shots. So we're excited for this game. We think it's going to be really fun.
So what about on the other end? What kind of problems does San Antonio present for OKC? And does San Antonio really have any chance of having a good offensive game? Like, I'm a little worried. That's part of the reason that I think they need to kind of make it a defensive slugfest, is I don't think they're going to be able to get great shots. And I think it's going to be quite difficult for them to really generate any like super high level offense, just because OKC has they're just bulletproof defensively.
A lot of people use the term bulletproof really, really loosely. This OKC team is really bulletproof. I think the biggest, just right off the top of my head, the biggest battleground that came to mind is Steph Castle's going to have the ball in his hands a lot this game, right? We've talked about him pretty much being the main point guard, even with Fox being back. Steph Castle has one of the highest turnover rates in the league. OKC generates the most half-court defensive turnovers in the league as well. So I think that's going to be the first thing that I'll be keyed on for this game specifically. Just how does Castle, we've seen at times him get a little bit flustered against mediocre defenses. This is not a mediocre defense. So yeah, how does he deal with the OKC swarm?
Another thing that kind of plays into what you were saying is that like this is, or Castle has been playing he's been mostly their point guard this season, despite De'Aaron Fox being there. De'Aaron has been playing kind of off ball more as just a pure scorer. This could very well be the first real game where San Antonio has Fox, Harper, Castle, and Wemby, just because of how all their injuries have lined up. And so I think it's a little dangerous going into a kind of like new, like it almost feels like a new team for everyone, right? Like no one's really played all four of those together. And I think that is a real danger for San Antonio against OKC, which is a team made up of sharks with lasers on their heads.
Basically, yeah. I think that's a really interesting point in conversation, because the only reason we're bringing that up is we both believe that could be their best lineup when all their players are healthy. The three guards, Fox, Castle, Harper, Wemby, and then whatever fourth fill-in option, whether that's Harrison Barnes, Champagnie, Keldon Johnson, Vassell even. So does Mitch Johnson just decide to go with it instead? Like, hey, I think these are our four best players plus a role player, and roll with that against, the scary, super scary OKC defense. I think that's a fascinating, if they all end up being healthy for this game, hopefully, Victor. Yeah.
The other interesting thing is kind of who does OKC want on Wemby? My initial reaction.
Let's see if we have the same one, because we haven't talked about this yet.
All right, 3, 2, 1.
Dort.
Chet.
Wow, really? Okay.
I think they're going to start with Chet, and if that doesn't work, they're going to go to J-Dub.
J-Dub, really?
Yep.
I think this is the Dort game. I think this is like from the examples we saw earlier in the season with like Rui and Royce O'Neal.
Yeah, maybe we talked about it in our first episode.
Exactly. I think this is the game where it's like Lou Dort, just like get in this guy's jersey, just
stand between his legs the whole game,
basically, and essentially foul him every time, probably too.
Yeah.
But he will be a foot shorter.
More than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, actually, literally a foot shorter. No, I think Dort's only like 6'3". No, he's like 6'5". I'm lying. 6'4".
Effectively a foot shorter.
Yeah, he's effectively a foot shorter, which is, I think, why I leaned a little bit away from Dort. Is that 8 inches, a foot. Like, it's worked really well against these like 6'11", 6'10" wings. I'm not sure if it's
Royce O'Neal 6'10".
Well, I meant
Rui. I hear you.
Yeah, so I want to go with someone with a little bit more size, and I think they want to put Dort on Castle, or actually no, I don't. I think they're gonna put their center. I think they're gonna put whoever's playing the 5 on
Castle.
Yep,
That's also another Castle.
Yeah, it's also another big Castle test. But I think they want Dort on Fox.
Really?
Yeah, because I think that's somewhat like if you can just completely shut out Fox from the game.
I don't think Dort's. I don't think he has the foot speed.
Okay.
I think it's a Case and Fox.
Okay, well, yeah, Case and.
However, the point is, we see the potential for the Thunder to not put Hartenstein or Chet when they're on the floor. Put that player on Wemby. Put a smaller player.
Yeah, unless they go essentially without Castle and go to like a real 5-out lineup. Exactly. I think we're gonna see the center on anyone but Wemby the whole game.
That's the pressure points, and I think that would be a huge win for OKC in many reasons. But I think the Spurs, they would argue like, no, we want Castle on the floor. He's one of our best players. So I think, this game's gonna be good. Can't keep emphasizing that enough.
All right, so we've talked about it a bit now. Who do you think's gonna win?
We're just gonna say Victor's healthy.
We're gonna go with Victor's healthy. If Victor's not healthy, it's kind of like, yeah.
Okay, I think it's. What percentage chance do you think the Spurs have to win if Victor's healthy? I think that's more interesting.
15.
Okay, I was thinking like a quarter in my head.
Okay, yeah, it's.
So we both
that's
feel
so
pretty
crazy
strong.
though.
We both feel really strongly about OKC. But we see the outcomes where the Spurs can totally win.
Yeah, I think
it's one game too, so shooting
yeah.
variance goes without saying.
Which is kind of went to the plan that I started at the front was like I think they have to rely on a bit of shooting variance to have a chance.
Yes, from a straight talent standpoint, I would agree with that.
And with that, we're on to the Eastern Conference.
So so the first game we're going to discuss is Heat Magic, and we've done a lot of Miami Heat and Orlando Magic on this podcast, so we have some addendum thoughts that we'd like to go over, starting with the Heat and this game specifically, but also broadly. We've seen Tyler Hero come back. This is an offense we've monitored really closely throughout the season. So what updates do you have for us, Robin, on the Miami Heat so far?
So there was a bit of a thought that when Hero came back, they would try to integrate him with more of what he's really good at, which is, a pick and roll operator, scorer. But that hasn't really happened. He's pretty much fit in seamlessly with almost exactly the same play type distributions as Norman Powell, lots of isolation, lots of transition, lots of drives. And it's been reasonably effective, right? He's scoring pretty well on those, but I think the issue arises that the difference between him and other players on the Heat that are kind of capable of doing the same thing is on defense, right? He's just nowhere near the defender he's not even the same level of defender as like Norman Powell.
Even
right?
Pelle Larsson.
Yeah, or even Pelle Larsson's, I think, a pretty solid defender, right?
Yes.
And so if you're not really getting like great stuff, if you're not getting like the best parts of Hero offensively, it's just not worth it.
So you're taking away his ceiling raising, or like ostensibly he's supposed to be more of a ceiling raiser offensively. That's his main thing, driving efficient shots for himself and others. And you're flatlining that. You're making him just a cog wheel in the machine, but the defense is still not there. So this is exactly what we were interested in thinking about, what would happen when he comes back. And so I think I wouldn't go as far to say he's a negative to the system.
No, he's still like a very effective offensive player. He's a great shooter, good driver, like can hit tough mid-range shots. Like
but when his greatest offensive strengths are being intentionally blunted for the sake of the system, I think that has an overall negative impact. So it'll be interesting to see if that continues. And I think it showed up a lot in this game. Desmond Bane just taking him one-on-one pretty much every time he was on him.
Anthony Black too just went straight through him a couple times.
Exactly. So you see it. Tyler Hero is not a plus defender. He likely will never will be. So, but he does have a lot of strengths on offense, and those strengths just aren't quite being used as much as we've seen in the past with him.
The other thing we've noticed is their offense has started to kind of slow down a little bit. It is not quite as good as it was. And
slow down in terms of literal, or like also in terms of
no, they're still playing about as fast as ever, but it's just not been quite as effective. And there's been a couple of times that we've really noticed a few things that we mentioned in our previous Heat pod of people. This is a pretty, like, once you scout out this offense, there's some very obvious things you can do to slow it down. The first one is jumping passing lanes that are going to happen very often, which is especially in like semi-transition and transition when they go up one side of the court and then swing it to the other wing. We saw Mikal Bridges jump that pass a couple of times. We saw Anthony Black do it in this game. We saw Jalen Suggs do it. It's become a little like predictable.
As we predicted.
The other thing that we really saw in this game was when the Heat kind of send a cut along the baseline or kind of cut through the defense, the person defending that player will just kind of hang out in the driving lane that is trying to be created for whoever's going to isolate and drive on the Heat. And if the rotations for the Heat aren't perfect on the other side and the spacing isn't perfect and the cut isn't really hard, the spacing that they need to kind of create these driving lanes just completely disappears.
Exactly. Yeah, it happened a couple times in this game. I think Anthony Black is the most prominent example that comes to mind. And like you're saying, when that strong side cut from the corner to under the baseline happens, the whole point is to drag that strong side defender with his head turned, looking at the cutting player. The Magic were well aware of this, and Anthony Black was able to just essentially zone up on the strong side knowing exactly where that backline defender was cutting towards. Wendell Carter came down from the other corner, zoned up the backline, and like you said, it was a very lazy cut, so the spacing was not ideal for the Heat. And yeah, it was just really easy for the Magic to sniff out exactly what the Heat were getting to. Andrew Wiggins got swallowed up under the basket, and it was a really easy turnover. So that's just one example that we saw, but it also illustrates the predictable nature of their general base offense.
And so when we have like kind of a level of predictability in offense, you know, it's never going to work quite as well as you'd want. What are some kind of tweaks or things that the Heat could do to try to help with this? My first ideas are kind of some weak side screening action for shooters, right? You have some very, very good shooters, people who can come off of screens. Those are kind of hard to time up with these drives, which I think is one of the reasons that we haven't seen it as much, is that it takes a lot of understanding from everyone on the team and on the court to time those screens up right. The other thing is kind of maybe some.
I would also push on the screening idea, because the whole point of their spacing wheel is like the spacing is less about the spots on the floor and more about the players in isolation themselves. So when you're intentionally putting players together, yes, that does have the ability to potentially open up seams in the defense, but it also puts two players together, and that's kind of what the Heat are. The whole point of this offense is avoiding that. What else did you have?
I think one place where they could kind of bring in some of that two-player interaction that might kind of be able to easily flow into this is getting into some DHO stuff. I think there are ways to, especially with the DHO hub as excellent as Bam, I think he's more than capable of kind of processing everything and being able to make decisions and catch and get into DHOs really quickly that don't kind of mess up the flow of the offense as much as someone else might. So I think that's something that they could explore,
and we've seen that a little bit anecdotally. This game, first play of the second half, was a Bam hero DHO, straight out of essentially an ATO first play. And so what that indicates for me is this is something the Heat staff are actively thinking about in terms of, again, hero. He's a player who creates out of those 2-on-1 advantages quite well, and it is a strength of his. So I think the Heat are thinking about that, and especially having Bam, like we talked about, is one of the best decision makers out of that hub high post position. So yeah, using that a little bit more, just sprinkling it in. Doesn't have to entirely change their offense, but I think it would be a positive to integrate those concepts just a little bit more.
The other team that played in this game was the Orlando Magic, who we've also spent a solid chunk of time talking about on this team. And in the past few weeks, we've seen Desmond Bane kind of really come on, and I think this was a great example of that and what he's been doing to be better than he was at the start of the season. The first thing that pops out to you, obviously, is he's just shooting better, but we kind of always expected that to happen.
Yeah, this game, he
was like 6 of 9.
6 of 9, 14 of 24 overall, 37 points. This is the Desmond Bane that the Magic traded for this offseason. This is why they traded for him.
But what really stood out to me was just how hard he was driving in the half court and in transition. The moment he had someone he felt he could even remotely overpower or get through, he just went, and he went straight to the basket, straight to the rim. And while he doesn't have particularly long arms, he is quite good at those kind of flip up, high off the glass layups. And for this game, it went really well for him. I think he was 6 of 8 at the rim in this game, which is immaculate. And I think that level of just kind of pressure and go immediately was something that the Heat really struggled with.
Something Desmond's teammate could maybe take something away from as
something
well.
One Paolo Banchero has also struggled with is that same kind of ideas, just going right away. And I think that really stood out. Kind of the difference between the two of them this game is how much quicker Bane was to kind of get into what he was doing. And I think that's very indicative of kind of the issues that we have had with Paolo as an offensive player. And obviously he's still coming back from injury. He's still kind of getting into the flow of it. And he did have some nice strong drives where he got fouled. But those often came when he did make a quick decision and did drive right away.
They're just a little bit too far and few between for our taste and what we see from Paolo. We've beat this horse a lot, especially in previous podcasts. But yeah, it's again similar to Fox. It's frustrating because we see it, the talent, the ability to get downhill quickly, get fouled, impose a physical will on the defense. It's there, and he just doesn't quite do it enough, and he's not quite good enough at the tough middies that he seems to always want to take. So, yeah, and we'll continue to discuss Paolo and when we transition to the preview for the next game. But yeah, anything else that stood out from this one that you want to maybe go over or addendamize?
The other thing that we have been talking about in this or in regards to this game are Anthony Black and Tristan da Silva, two players who have really kind of stood out to us this season as having one of them is being very good and the other one has improved a lot. And I think they're very interesting kind of reflections of each other in what they bring and what they do. And the starting point for that is kind of just size, right? Anthony Black doesn't have a huge wingspan, right? He might be tall, but he doesn't really have the wingspan to really be a small forward. Whereas Tristan da Silva is like truly kind of small forward, power forward sized. And
at least in terms of wingspan and height, he's a little thin to
little skinny
fully
still.
go up to, I would say, most fours. But I think as a solid small forward, yeah, Tristan da Silva, he fits the bill.
And obviously da Silva is nowhere near the athlete that Anthony Black is. And at this point is not the defender that Anthony Black is. But they are kind of, it's interesting how those two kind of fit slightly different positional spectrums and which one of those you kind of bring in when Franz or Paolo is missing as your fifth starter is a very interesting kind of lens to view these games through.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's probably the biggest reason we're bringing them up in tandem is Paolo missed a lot of time. Now Franz is out, and it's these two players have been the fill-in starters. For this game, it happened to be Anthony Black, but we both easily could have seen da Silva filling that role just as well. And yeah, I think Anthony Black is a player. It's always been the shooting, biggest swing skill for him.
It looks much better this year.
Can hit shots, exactly, and it's looking better.
Still not going in quite where you want it to, but it definitely looks better, and he's taking them with more confidence. I mean, you and I talked about this at Summer League, I think. Preseason, where he just came out and like
just
launching threes.
Transition.
Yeah, it was a transition one where he just,
we had a double take. Who was that?
Oh my god, who was that?
Exactly. So that's and he's continuing to make strides there, and I think what he was drafted for is defensive size.
As a guard,
not quite a small forward, but yeah, his size and quickness as a guard, and then the passing instincts, they're still there, and the flashes continue to be shown, and yeah, he's proving to be a solid rotation player right now.
Definitely.
And then our darling, you could say,
someone who's really kind of popped to us is Tristan da Silva. He has just a very complete offensive game.
Yeah, man, he's rock solid.
Yeah, like there is on offense. He can do it. He can shoot. He's a really good shooter, and I think he's someone who projects to be an even better shooter. Like I think he can really be a good shooter.
Frequency types of 3-point shots, right?
Yeah,
like not just corner catch and shoot. He can improve on that.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's already there. It's off screens, maybe even a couple dribbles, like similar trajectory we've seen like Duncan Robinson take in his career, like Simone Fontecchio even.
Yeah,
like shooters that develop beyond that just catch and shoot level.
And what's different between him and the Duncan Robinson type is that he has this drive game. He can actually put the ball on the floor. If it's a second side pick and roll, like that's okay too. Like he can get to other shots and while he's not a great athlete, he does have the level of athleticism necessary plus his size to actually do something around the basket.
Which is super, super exciting and important because he has a passing feel and a touch as well.
Mm-hmm.
So he's able to take advantage of the defense respecting his 2-point scoring ability. And this game, he had a feathery lob to Wendell.
Mm-hmm.
And for that to be your probably fifth best starter or off the bench player, that's super exciting. So we're really high interest in. And I've thrown around the comp as like a Julian Champagny plus in terms of just really being able to fit a role, do the standard role player things, hit shots, be a competent defender, but also that secondary creation, or in this case, tertiary or quad creation. Getting that out of this type of player is really interesting and exciting.
The big question mark with him is that defense. He obviously is tall enough. He still needs to put on some strength, but obviously he's a sophomore right now, so there's still lots of time for him to kind of...
Sophomore, but he is 24.
Is he? Oof, that's a little tough.
Yeah.
But he is, he can still maybe fill out a little bit and kind of add a little bit of strength. if he can be just fine defensively, that is a very, very useful player. And
I think there's even been flashes where I think the isolation foot speed stuff will never be.
yeah, that'll never be there.
Plus. But in terms of his off-ball awareness, he's even shown some shot blocking.
Well, he's 6'8" and has a huge wingspan.
Exactly.
That with a little bit of intelligence
goes a really long way.
Goes a long way, yeah.
Also, passing lanes,
Mhm.
the ability and willingness to dig down, no man and ball, just those really rock solid ceiling raising floor player abilities that get us both really, really like way too excited right now. Like this is Tristan Silver we're talking about, but it's really important because these are the players that, like we were talking about the Lakers, like if they had Tristan Silver, like instead of like Jake LaRavia coming off the bench, like
that would be huge. Like that would be game
exactly
changing for them.
So that's why we're getting so excited about him and what we see for his future. We're both pretty high on him in terms of his long-term outlook as probably a starter, right?
Like, yeah, I think him and Black both at this point project to be starter level players, which I think is really big for the Magic, right? All of a sudden you have 6 or 7 starter level players on your team like a year or two from now. Like that's huge. And you can deal with the salary cap side of having to pay all these players.
That's all
eventually.
That's the good problem.
Yeah, that's the good problem. But like they've really kind of built a core of like strong players who are all have size, have skill, everything around Paolo and Franz and Bane. Honestly, I think Bane is so far has been at least in this game was by far the best player on the court. And this team is set up to go as far as Paolo and Franz can take them.
I would absolutely agree with that, and it's cool to see because we did the pod earlier and we had all these trepidations about like why does it not quite look as good, and to see just a 1-game sample here where it and Franz is out, but to see it kind of all come together is cool to see in terms of the team building, because we both were really high in the process of them putting this team together over the summer. We both agreed Desmond Bane for what they gave up was
made sense,
the right decision, and yeah, so it's coming together for the Magic right now. It will have to come together more against the New York Knicks, who they will be playing against in the semifinal.
So what stood out to you about the Knicks from this game?
So again, this game, similar to OKC Suns, the Raptors missing quickly and Barrett, it likely was not going to be a very competitive game. But I think the number one thing that I took away was OG Anunoby's rim protection next to Karl Towns, which has been the number one thing throughout Karl's career as in terms of him being on competitive teams is what do you do with him defensively?
Despite being drafted for his defense?
Yes. How do you have a competent defense with him on the floor?
There were a number of times in this game where it looked like someone on the Raptors was just going to get to the basket easily and get to their layup, and OG would just kind of appear out of nowhere and set it into the stands or really disrupt the shot. And I think having players who are on the wing who are capable of doing that is really important next to someone like Karl Towns.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think it's more valuable when that player has the ability to defend the perimeter as well. Because like T-Wolves, they traded for Gobert with the idea of like we just can't win with Cat as our defensive center. Having Gobert on your team has a lot of strengths, but also poses a lot of weaknesses as well. When you not replace that player, but that role with someone like OG, has been one of the best perimeter isolation defenders for 5 or 6 years now, and
I mean longer than that at this point, right? Like
he's a very good established defender in the perimeter.
The thing with him was always like if you had to defend a random player in the league,
you would pick him. Exactly.
If your life depended on getting a stop, you'd always pick him.
There's a couple names now where you might.
There's other people now, but
yes.
Back when he was
peak of his powers,
that's what he was.
Yeah. But also speaking of peak of his powers with Raptors days, he was kind of posed as this like Kawhi, spacey. All he can do is guard the ball and the man in front of him. So to see him evolve and develop that off-ball ability, rim protection, supplemental rim protection, which we always talk about as being very, very important and valuable. It's
just so valuable.
And in this case, it's a little bit more of primary rim protection when you're next to Cat. So to see him take on that role and embrace it is big for me in terms of a larger evaluation of this Knicks team as a whole.
Well, it gives the Knicks kind of more punches to throw, essentially offensively, because it gives you that Mitchell Robinson who's going to just absorb every offensive rebound next to Cat kind of thing against teams that don't have two players capable of guarding kind of someone of Cat's size. And it also lets you be okay defensively when you go to Cat at the 5 and want to get to that true like 5-out spacing and really use the threat of Cat as a shooter and post up player to really kind of supercharge your offense.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
And I
always
mean,
been the
that's
dilemma.
what this Knicks team is built to be, right? Like this Knicks team is a stupendous offense, right? Like they've been
Second in the league now.
second in the league, like really really good offense. And
11th in defense as well.
11th in defense now, right? Like they're kind of knocking on the door of that true contender status of 5th on one side, 10th on the other side, right?
Yes, our famous test.
And I think also we talked about Cat's flaws, but I think he has also been better than he has in the past. I think like it's still not good, but it is not as just horrific as it has been in the past. And I think having people like having people like OG and Bridges and Mitchell Robinson who can kind of allow Cat to stay in the areas that are okay for him
Also, just
really
insulate
helps.
him in general.
Yeah, and just insulate him in general really helps and makes it so that he doesn't have to quite deal with all the because he just can't handle the like primary rim protecting responsibilities. And having other people who can fill in for that or make it so that those responsibilities aren't as great is what you need against or with to build a good defense around Karl-Anthony Towns.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, he's been solid this season. I think his superpower has always been his shooting at the center position in concert with his ability to get downhill and finish at the basket. That's really really powerful in terms of an offense, but it's always been the double-edged sword. As of course, like you said, you just can't handle the primary responsibilities of a rim protecting center. So that's posed a dilemma for many GM now in the NBA, and this is what the Knicks are currently doing to deal with that dilemma. And yeah, they are officially third now in total net rating in the league. Second in offense, like we said, 11th in defense. So I think we have to start discussing them in terms of like that championship real contender.
Yeah, I mean, right now
ranks.
it really does look like, in terms of net rating and our normal kind of go-to tests to see who's really a contender, it's New York and Detroit in the East. And I think personally, I just feel much more confident with New York's like real fastball than I do with Detroit's, if that makes sense. But hopefully we'll get to see that matchup. And there's also that kind of just huge morass in the East
Yeah, I was gonna
of
say
teams that are like
quite feel
all right next to each other. And
it's one of the most parity is what I would describe, like the highest level of parity that I can remember seeing in a conference in quite a long time. It's
but
really
the two
interesting.
teams that have kind of differentiated themselves from that big group are Detroit and New York.
Who we both have questions about. So yeah, we will see. However, we will be focused in on the matchup the Knicks will have on Saturday against the aforementioned discussed Magic. What are some things with this game that you might find interesting?
What I'm really excited to see is how Suggs and Brunson kind of match up. I think Brunson is one of the preeminent head whip back, get every bullshit foul call ever.
Feels contact. He's gonna do everything in his power to accentuate it.
And Suggs is a bit of a foul prone player. So I'm interested to see if he can be able to kind of
foul prone, not in the sense that he can't defend you, so he has to foul you Duncan Robinson style, in the sense that he's really really physical.
Yeah, and really aggressive and willing to really kind of get into you and like he's okay with some of these fouls. And I think this is one where he's going to have to balance that really finely. Because obviously you want to get into Brunson, you want to make it difficult for him, but if Brunson, gets to that like 12, 13, 14 free throw attempt kind of game, I think it's going to be really tough for the Magic.
Yeah, I agree with you on this particular battleground. Brunson has been one of the best shot makers in the league this season, just as a point guard and as a player. And him going up against Suggs, who we both agree is, when he's at his best and healthy, is one of, if not the best on ball point guard defenders in the league. So Yeah, that's the headliner for me in terms of individual matchups for this game.
One question I have for you on that front is when Anthony Black and Jalen Suggs are on the floor with Jalen Brunson, who are you putting on Brunson, and who do you want more off ball doing roaming stuff?
I think even with Franz being out for the Magic, enough of the offensive on-ball responsibilities will be with Paolo that I would be comfortable just putting Suggs on Brunson. I think he's distinctly better enough than Black at this point. Black is still relatively young and learning, especially against such a savvy, crafty offensive player like Brunson. I would just feel more comfortable, at least to start, putting Suggs on him.
Well, I think that's one of the real strengths of the Magic is that like they have multiple strong defenders that you can throw at someone like Brunson, and so even if one does get into foul trouble, you still have the other one to come out. Like if Suggs does get into foul trouble, it's not like you have to just take him out of the game. You can put him on someone else where he's not going to pick up as many fouls and let him do his off-ball roaming thing, which he's also immaculate at, and have Anthony Black do his thing on Suggs.
Exactly. And of course it's basketball. We talk a lot about these individual matchups, like they're 1v1s, but switches happen, transition matchups happen. Like these players aren't going to be guarding who we're discussing every single time. So like that's another strength for the Magic if in this discussion, like if Suggs happens to get for whatever reason switched off of Brunson, you have players like Anthony Black can fill right in, and you're going to feel pretty good about it.
So what about when the Magic are on offense? Where do you like? Are you going to probably? I think
you're
have
picking
to,
at a scab.
Yeah,
That
I think
really
you have
big
to put
scab.
Towns on Mitchell Robinson because I don't think. Well, I mean, do you? I think that's an interesting question actually.
Wait, hold on.
Or not Mitchell Robinson.
Wendell.
Yeah, on Wendell. Do you have to put Towns on Wendell? Is there another setup that we can go to there that might be just as good? How do you feel about Bridges on Paolo? Do you want to, does the existence of Bane kind of force Bridges onto Bane the whole time? Are there some more interesting matchups? How much do they go to kind of the double big stuff? Is that going to be viable here? The Knicks do have players that or the Knicks and Magic actually, both teams have players that you're pretty okay putting, or like have guards that you're pretty okay putting bigs on because they're not that much of a shooting threat, or at least haven't proven to be a reliable shooting threat.
Anthony Black and Josh Hart, just
Yeah.
to say the names. They're both players that if the Magic wanted to put Wendell on Josh Hart to start, maybe Paolo on Cat, just start with that matchup a little bit.
Does that feel better to you than having Wendell on Cat? I almost feel better with Wendell on Cat. Like I trust Wendell's ability to switch onto Brunson about as good as any big center. And Wendell's an excellent switch defender.
Pros and cons of both. I think having just putting the body on Cat to just deal with him in Paolo, he has the physical size. I don't think he's going to get overwhelmed. And then having that rim protection of Wendell on Josh Hart, it's really powerful. Forcing Josh Hart, like we talked about, like role players having them just like you're going to have to make a lot of shots. This will probably have to be a Josh Hart make shots game, which is if that happens for the Magic and he does make shots, you just tip your cap. So yeah, that's one dynamic. And then on the other side, it's Anthony Black. How do the Knicks want to take advantage of him being on the floor without the ball in his hands?
My guess is if Anthony Black starts, is they'll probably start with Brunson guarding him. That would be my guess. With Bridges on Bane and probably Hart on Suggs.
Yeah.
Leave OG for Paolo, which I think that's what they want.
What you want.
Yeah, that's what you want. And probably just be probably try to avoid switching as much as you can, just because I think if the Magic can really kind of hunt Brunson with Paolo, that is a matchup that Paolo can really go after and do quite well in.
Exactly, especially if you get in situations where Brunson ends up on Bane or Paolo, and then you can bring Cat into that action, regardless of who is guarding Cat at the time. The goal for the Magic at all times should be getting Brunson and Cat into as many actions together as possible, because they're not going to want to switch that. And as we've talked about ad nauseum, Cat is a 2-on-1 defender, is bad.
I think this is a game where we're going to see just how much the NBA Cup matters to the Knicks, because I don't think you can really play Mitchell Robinson more than 15 to 18 minutes. But And I think they don't really have anyone else that I really feel comfortable doing anything in this game. Like, you'll bring in Jordan Clarkson, but he's just going to get hunted, I think, pretty mercilessly.
Could this be a Yabu at center game if they really go in?
I think that's yeah. Could you go Yabusele and Towns at the same time?
Hasn't been great so far this season.
Yeah, and Yabusele has not been particularly healthy and hasn't really been hitting his threes, but that's, one of the big weaknesses with this Knicks team is that they don't really have anyone outside of this 5.5-man group with Mitchell Robinson kind of playing half of, a real rotation player's minutes.
Deuce McBuckets, you're not feeling off the bench? Or is he going to be healthy for this one? What's the current status of Deuce McBride?
Didn't play in the last one. I mean, they're also missing Landry Shamet, who would have been a useful minutes eater at times.
He's been solid this season.
Yeah, he's been solid. Like,
the Knicks depth is not a strength for them right now.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I think, as we kind of saw in the Heat game, the Magic's ability to just kind of throw players at you that are all competent and good, and you will always have someone who's capable of attacking, guarded by Jalen Brunson or Jordan Clarkson, someone that they can really go after over and over again, was a real problem. It was the problem for the Heat when with Tyler Hero and Norman Powell, they just were able to kind of just go through them over and over and over again, and I think it could be a problem for the Knicks too.
I agree. We mentioned this might not be a Mitchell Robinson game, but when he is in there, he continues to be one of the best offensive rebounders in the league. How do you think the likes of Goga Batadze and John Isaac could do against just slowing him down a little bit, taking that away? If the Knicks decide that's something they want to go to, it might just be menial enough that it doesn't warrant a larger discussion.
I mean, I think Goga's fine as a rebounder, and I think generally this Magic team is pretty solid as a rebounding team. They have a lot of size when they want to, and they have, like, Paolo's a solid rebounder, Bane is a good rebounder, Suggs is obviously capable of tapping the ball away. Anthony Black's really good at that too, actually. He's really good at kind of tapping the ball away from people, despite not having quite the length, which, I mean, he's bigger and longer than some of the other Magic player, but, like, I don't think the rebounding is going to be that big of an issue. Additionally, they could always go to what the Raptors tried and go to the Haka and try to just get Mitchell Robinson off the floor. But I also don't think they're going to need to do that. I think they can kind of handle the rebounding a bit better than this depleted Raps team.
Yeah, Magic third in the league in defensive rebounding, so it shouldn't be an issue. But I bring it up because as close as this game ever got, it was Knicks Raptors I'm referencing. It was largely put away in the third or late in the second due to the Knicks' relentless offensive rebounding. So that continues to be a big part of their game regardless of who's on the floor. So we'll see it probably figure to some degree, and it's just how the Magic deal with it.
So do we want to make predictions?
I think this one's close enough we don't have to do percentages.
I think we can just pick a winner.
What's your pick? What are you feeling? One game, Magic Knicks.
I think I have to lean Magic. I think they pick at some of the weaknesses for this Knicks team with having kind of a couple of weak defenders that match up pretty poorly with how the Magic want to attack. I think the Magic are going to have to play their starters a ton of minutes if they want to compete in this game. And I think the Magic's kind of relentless pace can really push on a team like that. So I think I would pick the Magic.
My initial inclination is to also lead Magic, but we've seen when this Magic team has off nights, it's a really off night. And there's a reason the Knicks have been as good as they are offensively, defensively as well. And I have a hard time betting against Jalen Brunson on just a one-game basis. It's tough to discount how good he's been as a scorer and a creator this season. So I might lean slightly towards the Knicks just based on how strongly I feel about Brunson, and then if they do decide to commit to the 5-out spacing and OG is a improving rim protector, it's for a one-game sample, anything can happen, of course. But I think I lean a little bit towards the Knicks on this one. But this should also be another good game.
I guess we'll see. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to check us out on Instagram and YouTube for kind of video portions of the podcast with added video to kind of show you what we're talking about. Don't forget to leave a like and review and follow along. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening, and see you soon.